Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good evening. However you're watching, wherever you're watching, however you listen, wherever you listen. It's the Bet Online Salute to Troy podcast. And we have a tripod, and he has a beard. Special guest from Tiger Bait, Preston Guy. Preston, we are known as the Bearded Bandits. We've been trying to get Jamal to grow a beard. Jamal probably shaved this morning, and that's what he has. Jamal refuses to grow a beard. Ryan has a beard. I have a beard. We've been dubbed the Bearded Bandits. So now we have a guest, and you're the Bearded Bandit. You're the honorary Bearded Bandit, even though you're behind enemy lines. We'll let you get set up here.
I'm sorry, my screw fell off on my mic.
No worries.
I was tightening my mic so where it wouldn't move, and then the screw fell out. I'm like, oh God, that's gonna fall out mid-show. I'm sorry. It's never happened to me before. But yeah, no, look, man, let me tell you, it's all about the Millennial Beard Club, man. That's what we do, you know.
Look at that. I mean, that's a nice cut, Preston, too. I mean, there's some, you can tell there's some cultivation, there's some care there. I mean,
I've had this since I was 18 years old. I realized I looked like a baby, and I had to grow it out to get any respect from my fellow man.
So, Preston, I will say this. I did a little research before you came on. You were on the show. You said you were worried about the 30 grays. I got gray in mine. Let it go, bro. Just let it grow in. Embrace it, Preston. Just embrace it. So, good deal. We're happy to have you on. We're here to talk USC LSU. I will let you know this. My fans are going to give me a ration of noise because there's three things that I hate in college football. Okay. It's Oregon, UCLA, and SEC football.
How do you feel about split championships?
I don't like those either, and that should have went to SC too.
Me neither.
That should have went to SC also.
It seems like there should be like a BCS or college football play, like a standard.
It would have been nice.
All respect,
how come that wasn't invented? Yeah, exactly.
I had nothing to do with that. That's way above our head. But no, neither here nor there. I'm just letting you know they're going to give me a ration of noise and that's a story for a different day. Jamal knows why, and it doesn't really matter. We're moving on. But I'm happy to have you here. Welcome. I'm going to kick off a couple questions to you. So, big deal, and I mentioned this in the show past. Game 1, Sunday, September 1st, Allegiant Stadium, LSU, USC. On our end of the world, there's a lot of comparison that these two are similar, very similar. Quarterback starter who's been in the program for a long time, losing a Heisman Trophy winner, made some coaching changes, recruits in and out, all the big things that's happening. Coach's third year, it's now or never. Their seat is starting to warm up. We're getting a matchup of two very similar teams. Do you see that, and how do you feel about that?
You know, and it's also very interesting. Let me add another parallel in there for you. Remember, there was a lot of talk that, Lincoln Riley might come to LSU. And the talk was, because they hired Brian Kelly a week after USC hired Lincoln Riley. And of course, those were probably your top two candidates for the LSU job. I to this day, I don't know if LSU offered Lincoln Riley or not, but it definitely would have been a great hire. It would have made a lot of sense. And now those coaches have gone their separate paths, and we've seen how they've gone. And, guess what? Those coaches went on to have the next two Heisman winners. And both have, found themselves not quite on the cusp of where they want to be as a program, but certainly with some early success. So there are a lot of parallels. I'll tell you this. USC's completely revamped their defense. LSU has completely revamped their defense after 2 years. So, yeah, I see a good bit. I guess the difference would be is that LSU is coming off a year where they had a disappointing 10-win season. And, USC obviously is probably a little more disappointed with their season that they had going 7-5 or 7-6 after the bowl game last year, so probably a little more frustration and more hot seat, just for the record. In if you repeat that, you know what I mean? You're coming off a 10-win versus a 7-win season. That's where things start to get a little different.
Yeah, no, Preston, great point. And, SC did finish 8-5, with the win in the bowl game. But yes, absolutely, to your point. We were just talking the other day about what a big difference that is. Even the difference between 8 wins and 10 wins is absolutely significant. So point certainly noted. Preston, kind of more macro level question. what are the expectations for LSU this year?
Yeah.
And how is kind of the outlook of the team? What are maybe top 4 or 5 guys on offense, top 4 or 5 guys on defense, and just what's kind of the state of the team going into the season?
Well, let me divide that up into 2 parts. We'll talk about the dudes after, and we'll start with the expectations first. The expectations are absurdly simple. Make the playoffs. That's the bar. And I think that's going to be the bar moving forward at a program like LSU. Make the playoffs. I mean, it's understandable that you're in the SEC. You're going to trip up every once in a while, right? Number one, LSU's schedule for the foreseeable future has actually gotten easier. Number one, Nick Saban's not on your schedule every year anymore. Number two, there's more rotation in the SEC. So you don't have the SEC West plus Florida and then one opponent from the East, the madness that was the former SEC. You have a lot more rotation, which means the die are going to roll in LSU's favor a lot more often than when you're guaranteed to play the juggernauts that they've been guaranteed basically for the last, since 1992, basically. So make the playoffs, get in. The 9-3 that squeaks in as the final team to the playoff versus the 9-3 where you're the first team looking out is going to have drastically different feels. One has people wanting to run Brian Kelly out of town. One has people feeling, all right, we're there because you're relevant at the end of the year. You're a competitor. People are talking about you. If you are not in the playoff, you're not a relevant program. And LSU just prides itself way too much to not be a relevant program down the end of the year. If we're talking about the dudes, highlighting a few guys who are going to be very important for LSU, obviously that starts with Garrett Nussmeier. Again, very similar situation to Miller Moss, been around for a while, highly recruited guy. He's actually a guy who came into camp with Caleb Williams at LSU. And Coach O loved both of them. They had them as 1A and 1B on their board, right? And Caleb Williams obviously had just everybody who's who of college football. And Garrett Nussmeier, he also had, he was a high 4-star. He had a lot of guys on him, but he's originally from Lake Charles, actually, Louisiana, right? So I think that kind of tie in. As nomadic as he is, his dad is the quarterback coach for the Philadelphia Eagles, right? He's been around Doug Nussmeier. He was an assistant coach at Dallas. He's just been all over. So they're as nomadic as they are, that's the closest thing to home he's ever had. Nussmeier, throughout his career, has had opportunities to get thrust in, didn't get to start until the bowl game. Threw for 395 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, led a 98-yard game-winning drive to seal the deal against Wisconsin. So some absolutely great. In spring, he's been dominant. In fall camp, he's had a few plays here and there where he's been kind of struggling, but I expect a 3,000-yard season out of him. I think he's due for a very good year. I think he's ready, and he's a gunslinger. He might have a few too many turnovers, but I think LSU is really good at that quarterback spot. Kyron Lacey is going to be stepping up as his number 1 receiver, and last year his big knock on him was too many drive-killing drops. We're talking about those third down drops that just decimate your drive. We hadn't seen that in basically since Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas took off the pads and said, we're done. He's kind of stepped up into a really good role. He is moving very well in fall camp. He's almost unguardable, which might be a little bit of credit to LSU struggling secondary, might be his credit, but he's clearly head and tails. The way he moves reminds me a lot of a Justin Jefferson. Those long arms, the way he's shifty and makes people move, he's doing really well. And of course, the offensive line as a whole is going to be one of the best offensive line units in the country, led by Will Campbell, who is a lot of people a top 5 draft pick this year. But you also have your right tackle will be a first rounder, and then you've got 2 fifth-year seniors on the inside. So offensive line going to be huge. You're going to have a more traditional running game. You're not going to be able to just say, hey, Jaden, go take off and run for 250 today. You're going to have a more traditional run. That's where guys like Caleb Jackson, running back, who's a rising sophomore, is going to have to take on a bigger role. Defensively, you've got Harold Perkins, the linebacker. Linebacker is the strength of this defense. The rest of it's a big question mark. I mean, a real big, the secondary and defensive line. You've got all new coaches. You hired 4 big name coaches for those position groups: a safeties coach, corner coach, D tackle coach, and a DN coach. You're going to have to develop some guys, because it's not like you went to the portal and you got big name guys. Like I remember there was some talk of Bear Alexander maybe hitting the portal. You didn't get anybody like a Bear Alexander, not even close. It's more so just developing what you had and providing some better coaching is what you're hoping for with those units, and maybe some young guys kind of emerging as they're now ready. So keep an eye out. Defense, we'll just have to see.
Preston, I'm gonna ask you a question. You kind of mentioned it. Portal. This is something came through earlier this year about the portal. How Brian Kelly isn't a fan of the portal.
Yeah.
Is that a truthful statement? And then the next thing is, what is the NIL situation like at LSU?
Okay, so part one is portal.
Yeah.
Brian Kelly likes to use the portal to supplement, not build a foundation, right? He wants to recruit well and develop players as 4-year players. That's his vision. And he wants to bring in guys here and there, like, 7, 8, 9 transfers. His first 2 years on campus, he had to hit the portal heavy, right? He had to, because Ed Orgeron left this program decimated. I mean, it was just completely blown up. There was, for the bowl game, there was less than 40 scholarship players against Kansas State, and including not a single quarterback available for that bowl game. So you really had to rebuild in a big kind of way. And they did that. Year one, they hit on the transfer portal very well, including guys like a Heisman winner, Jaden Daniels, right? Year two, most of your transfer portal guys were misses. You really missed big time. And that's kind of what he doesn't like is, sometimes you hit and sometimes you miss in the transfer portal. And with almost all those guys, there's no time to develop. You need them to play now and play well, right? Whereas recruiting, you have time to develop and build these guys. So he's not a huge fan of it, but he's willing to use it, especially as needed. He's just not willing to go out and do it. I also have a sneaky suspicion that it's going to become more prominent when they get 105 scholarship players next year. I think that's going to change things quite a bit. To follow that up on the NIL, LSU is in good, not great. They're working on improving their NIL situation. LSU has a really strong recruiting advantage in the state of Louisiana. It's one of the things that's made LSU a prominent program over the years is the state of Louisiana produces so much talent per capita. And in Louisiana, there's no competing factors. There's no UCLA up the road. There's no Cal. There's no Stanford. In the state of Louisiana, it's LSU, and LSU is it. And all these kids grow up rooting for LSU as if it's their pro team. Like, that's it. That's the option. So you have a really strong, and Brian Kelly's just absolutely eating the state alive because they know that. Now they're getting money for these kids, but they're not really overpaying. From what I understand, they rank toward the top in the SEC. Top 4 or 5, but there are schools that are dwarfing them, like a Texas or a Texas A&M. They're not topping them, but again, it works because to get these local kids, this strong pipeline of talent, you don't have to outbid a Texas for the hometown kid all the time. A lot of times he wants to stay home and he's willing to take a competitive offer.
No, Preston, it's a great point. It's one of the things we've talked about on the show is for USC to really sort of solidify itself, needs to build that Trojan wall again in California and in Southern California in particular. Yeah. It sounds like there's a tiger wall that's all sort of like already built in inherently. A couple follow-ups, Preston, such terrific insight. Maybe you can double click a bit on Brian Kelly. How is he doing? What may be different this year? What's sort of the perception of him within the fan base? How is he sort of kind of reacting to being in the SEC from a place like Notre Dame? What's kind of the state of Brian Kelly? Yeah. And then 2, you talked about a lot of question marks on defense. What's the one position group or the one coach that you're seeing from fall camp? There's some sneaky upside there and what you're kind of expecting the most out of?
Well, the perception of Brian Kelly has been he's done a pretty good job restabilizing LSU. The roster he was handed, if he had just done a meh job, we're talking about a team that was going 5-7 or worse the next year. I mean, you needed to completely nuke that program and start from the ground up. He replaced all the coaches except for the offensive line coach. He replaced a lot. Whereas that hadn't really happened at LSU in a while. Les Miles retained a lot of Nick Saban's staff, and Orgeron took over as an interim coach and have kept almost everything from the Les Miles tenure there. So It really has been a while. So he did a good job of getting 10 wins season one. Of course, last year was a disappointing season, going 10-4. 10-3. You went 10-4 the year before. You really wanted more out of this team. They were top 5 in the preseason, and they got blasted by Florida State. And that defense, I mean, here's the deal. They halfway met expectations. That offense was actually, it ranks top 3 in SEC history for how efficient it was. Right. That defense was just dreadful. It was. I mean, look.
I feel your pain.
All of the acronym, all the adjectives you've used to describe USC football last year for that defense were described at LSU, right? And it was very frustrating. We both had to watch Heisman winners held back by a dreadful defense. And Brian Kelly was quick to react. So I think people are happy with the job he's done, given within the perspective of what he was handed. But now it's like, okay, time's up. This is your 3rd year. It's time to be a competitor, and not like okay, you made the SEC championship and got stomped by Georgia. Like, no, you need to be like, people need to be considering you among the elites in the country, and you haven't done that yet. While that perspective is on his career is coming here, you're also talking about replacing a Heisman winner and 2 first-round draft picks at wide receiver. So in one way, it's a rebuild. In the other, it's like the rebuilding done happened. You need to build up now. It's time.
So we talked about this earlier. September 1st, LSU, USC, Las Vegas.
Yeah.
What are the expectations of this game? And I'll just give you my little backstory. Yeah. I played at USC when we played Arkansas, and we went to Arkansas, and we heard a lot of, we won't win, we're going to get stumped, it's SEC football, all that stuff. We went and hung like 70 on them easily. But neither here nor there, that's the past. But what are the expectations now of this game, the fact that they're evenly matched? What's the talk around Baton Rouge of this game going into Allegiant Stadium?
Boy, I'm going to tell you this. The pressure is on. Did you know LSU has lost every opener since that 2019 season?
Wow, I didn't realize that. Oh my goodness. Okay.
You cannot drop a half a decade's worth of openers at LSU. I would argue, even being a non-conference game, even in a year where, you can make the play, this is probably the most important individual game on LSU's schedule because of that. You have to win your opener. You cannot start off with a bitter note. 5 years in a row, that's not good at all. So you got to get a win here. There's a ton of pressure. There's a little added motivation, albeit maybe some of us old men remember this a little better, but a lot of people are really still salty about that 2003 championship that was split. A lot of LSU fans feel like, hey, we won the BCS championship. We were the rightful champions. And, what really they disliked about it more than the actual splitting of the championship was the lack of acknowledgement for it the subsequent year and the subsequent year after that, as the whole three-peat thing with, Pete Carroll, Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart at USC, all those guys, were doing their thing. There was almost no acknowledgement that, hey, LSU just won the national championship. I mean, because everybody was calling USC the champion, because LSU, of course, they were good. Remember, Jamarcus Russell was there. They went 11-2 back-to-back years. They had 1-9-3 year the year after in 2004. USC won the championship that year, though. And it just felt like there was no acknowledgement. So a lot of people were really upset with USC, really did not like it. They looked at it as West Coast, Los Angeles media bias. There were FUSC bumper stickers around. Sometimes you'll see like an old rundown Chevy and it still has that that purple and gold FUSC bumper sticker here. So there's a lot of that bitterness to it. And then there's the factor of a lot of people wanted Lincoln Riley. I sat on my podcast and I told everybody, I didn't think Brian Kelly was an option. I was like, well, look, he's been a coach at Notre Dame for 12 years. He ain't leaving for LSU. He's no, a guy like Lincoln Riley, much more attainable. We're talking about a guy who got promoted 4 or 5 years ago and might want a big pay raise after. I sat there and I beat on my chest. Lincoln Riley's the guy I want LSU to hire. So there's a lot of that goes into this. There's a lot of just extra stuff beyond the football game that LSU fans are looking into right now.
No, it's a fascinating perspective, Preston. So I'll ask it this way. I think we feel like it's going to be a very competitive game. I think you do as well. I think we're expecting a lot of points on both sides here, just given where we are defensively. D'Anton Lynn has come to USC now from UCLA, kind of turned around in a top 90 defense into a top 10 defense last year. And so expectations are hopefully he can do some version of that right away, just given the turnaround. What are the expectations on the defensive side of the ball with LSU? Yeah. Is there a particular position group, coach that maybe is standing out from this group? And is there kind of an upside or trajectory that there may be a group that may be sneaky good or a coach that may be sneaky good this year?
Well, Blake Baker is the new defensive coordinator, and he's a very high-energy guy, a guy who did a really good job rebuilding Missouri's defense basically from the ground up, similar to the assignment he has here. He actually he was an assistant coach at that 2021 LSU team that got Ed Ogeron fired, but he was coaching linebackers, and Damone Clark had one of the best seasons we've seen as a linebacker at LSU. He had 100-something tackles, 130-something tackles. It was extraordinary to watch. Well, he's bringing a lot of energy in this defense. One of the big things about Matt House last year, the players all hated him. I mean, especially as things started to unravel, you saw him getting a lot of disrespect, guys kind of shrugging him off, and not much love and hugs for Matt House when he was gone. A lot of players actually publicly tweeted after he got fired, things like, ain't no fun when the rabbit's got the gun, in a very public way you don't typically see. Typically a coach loses his job and players are very sad to see him go, type situation. Not for Matt House. So certainly that. Bo Davis is arguably the best defensive line coach in the country. The job he did at Texas is extraordinary, building back that defensive line. He's an LSU alum. That's why LSU was able to snag him from Texas. And he's doing a lot of good work with these defensive tackles who were dreadful a year ago. A lot of people don't understand that last year, LSU's defensive tackle coach, he got a terminal disease of some sort. Not terminal, I'm sorry. It was a serious disease and was not able to coach last year. So they had an interim coach all last year, and they had the special team coordinator was going out of his role. He's typically a linebacker coach, was coaching defensive line, and you could see it on the field how undisciplined they are. So those are guys to watch out. As far as expectations for the defense, well, the expectation is go from historically abysmal to kind of good. Like let's add the kind of good on there, like be all right. They're playing a lot better in fall camp than they were a year ago. A year ago, they were just getting torched. I mean, Jaden Daniels was running all over them. Then Garrett Nussmeier would sub in. He would throw all over them. It was just, they could not. And we were just like, well, is this the defense bad or offense good? Turns out, yes, was the answer. Both. Defense was that bad and the offense was that good. And that's why you got a mundane 9-3 season out of it. This year, we're not really seeing that. The defense, especially this last week, has really turned it up and started making some plays. And we're starting to feel a lot better about them.
It's crazy how similar these stories are.
I know. I mean, Coach, I was thinking that same thing. I mean, when you talk about a universally disliked defensive coordinator, I was thinking Alex Grinch. When you're talking about one of the best defensive line coaches in the country, we're thinking about Eric Henderson. I mean, this is like, look, it's the Spider-Man meme right now. You're just sort of looking in the mirror and you're saying, brother? I mean, what's going
apparently on? Lincoln Riley really liked that guy, though, because he kept him around forever. It's like, man, whose nudes does he have right now? Man, this guy, I've never seen a guy struggle as consistently as Alex Grinch and just continue to hold down a job.
And then he got another job in the same conference for a team that has high expectations. Like,
where did he get hired at?
He's at Wisconsin now.
Wisconsin.
Oh, it's funny you say in the conference. That's just throwing me for a loop. Yeah, in the conference, you're right.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. And then, like, he has to come to the Coliseum, and they're going to put 3,800 up on him because his defensive scheme just does not make sense. But this is LSU. I'm sorry. I was going to go on a rant. No, but I'm just saying it's crazy how, like, there's certain things like you say that we hear out here. East Coast bias when it comes down to poll voting. You know what I mean? Like, or SEC favoritism and things like that.
Hey,
like,
look. Let me put an out you there. They'll say East Coast bias here too. They say coastal bias. Look, in the deep South, there's very much so like the coastal elites. You know, that liberal propaganda. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's very much a factor in play.
Like for example, like I'll give you like on my last show, it's like it makes no sense. Like a team replacing a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, getting a brand new defense, has a quarterback that's deep in the system. Shouldn't they be ranked number 13 in the nation? And both Jamal and Ryan was like, "Are you talking about LSU?" Like, no, I'm talking about USC. Like, it's the exact same thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's so much similarities, but neither here nor there. I have a kind of off the chart question here because we run out of time here. Kind of creeping on you on your YouTube. Saw you was playing NCAA 25. I see that. First of all, if you ever want to play, I got PS5 too. I'm always down to play a game. But have you ever tried running 0-1 trap? That's the unstoppable play on NCAA 25. And don't tell everybody because they'll patch it. It won't work anymore.
Well, I do like that play, but it depends on how well your guard pulls. If it's actually unstoppable, because like sometimes your guard will just get hung up on your center, especially if your center gets blown up. You're like, all right, But fun story. I actually have to do my Road to Glory Dynasty with USC because so the game director followed me on Twitter. And I said, hey, what team should I do my Road to Glory with? I will honor whatever you say. So I had like dozens of people saying, do this. I said, guys, I said the game director. So the director of the game said, USC fight on. I said, all right, I guess that's who I'm doing it.
So the game director for NCAA football.
The game director. Yeah, that's right.
He
tweeted at me. He just said, USC fight on. I think he's a USC alum.
He must be. Yeah. So that's great. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, Preston, we'll let you out on this. Thanks so much for the time. Final prediction, USC LSU game prediction and score, and then what's LSU going to go win-loss this year?
I think LSU is a 9-3 football team with a 10-2 schedule. I genuinely think that. I think that it's gotten a little easier on them, and I think I'm determining right now, are they going to screw up a game they should win this year or not? So I'm between 9-3 and 10-2 with LSU. USC, I do think LSU takes that one. I really like the offense. Zachariah Branch is someone LSU just frankly does not have an answer for, but hopefully he can kind of just be contained enough. And I really do think this LSU offense is gonna really pick up where we saw pick up from last year. And I'm not saying they're going to be the same offense they were, because that's just absurd to think that, but I think they could be like a top 10 offense. I think they look really good. I think Nussmeier is very much so going to be a good quarterback who throws for more than 3,000 yards. So I am taking LSU. I think Vegas nailed it. Not the venue, but the bettors with the spread 6.5. I think LSU wins by a touchdown. I think
it actually went down. It's down to 6.
A 6. Okay. Well,
I was looking at it while we were on here.
I will say this. The difference between 6 and 6.5 and 7.5, that's a big difference. That means it's within a touchdown. You know what I mean? That's like once you start getting to 7.5, you're like, oh, they think that they're about to have a double-digit victory, basically. Mm-hmm. So, anyways, I think that's about right based on what I've seen. Well, I think LSU's offensive line is going to be really good. I think the running game is going to be something that's difficult to stop, mainly because of how good the offensive line is. And I do think LSU will take care of business. I think there's also a little bit of added motivation in that you can't drop 5 openers. They're gonna be pulling out some tricks out of their hat for this game one for sure. Because I promise you, Brian Kelly understands what it means.
That's a wild stat.
Preston, I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on. If you want to come on again, game week, we're more than happy to help you come on again. We can talk a little game prep and things like that. I even got some LSU film if you even want to go through some LSU.
Sure, guys. Let me know.
I got the Florida State. I got like 5 games, so we can even talk through that.
Not Florida State film. All right, film, I'll watch.
We can talk through it, but
I actually did film breakdowns on Florida State and Ole Miss last year, and oh my god, it is just that's not fun tape to watch. It's so bad. Like you're sitting there tallying everything that goes wrong, and you ran out of room on the paper for your tallies.
I actually like what Brian Kelly does on offense with his pass game, how he uses a lot of misdirection and get your eyes in the wrong place and goes opposite the tight end under and all those types of things. I really like that. But you're more than welcome to come back here, even though you're behind enemy lines and a lot of my fans. Well, here's going to be a thing too. So we have a lot of low key Oklahoma fans who watch our show because they hate Lincoln Riley, and now that they found out that Lincoln Riley might have dodged the LSU job, they're going to start screaming he's scared of the SEC again. Guaranteed that's going to be in the comments.
You know what's hilarious? You want to talk about more mirrors? We get the same thing with Notre Dame fans. I am telling you, I get more Notre Dame fans harassing me and coming to my show. Every time LSU loses, half our chat is Notre Dame fans.
Yep.
The mirrors are hilarious.
It's unreal. It's unreal. Well, Preston, thanks so much. Pleasure to have you on, and welcome back anytime. And hopefully this is the first of many conversations. Thanks so much.
Yeah, appreciate you. Thanks all the friends. Thanks everybody coming. You guys know what it is. Bet Online Stitcher Podcast. Live free, fight on.